I will never forget that day. And quite appropriate to share those words this morning with what I'm going to share, which I posted on Facebook. I'm starting to lecture more than preach. I don't know. But I like learning and sharing with you the things that I learn. And I try to write out everything so I don't ramble too much. I want to start with telling you a story about my youngest son, Zephyr, when he was 7 years old. I got a call to come to his school, and my mother taught there at the time, and she said, "You need to come pick this boy up." And I said, "Well, what happened?" She said he was kicking the back of a little boy's chair over and over until the little boy was very aggravated and complained to the teacher. And I was shocked, thinking that I did not raise him that way, but then I recalled football and all of the male stuff that we had done, and I realized maybe I had been raising him that way. That was a interesting day for me. I did pick him up and I disciplined him appropriately, but what I found interesting, what gave me pause, was what he said to me in the car. When I said to him, "Son, why were you kicking that little boy's chair over and over?" And he said, "Because I could. Because I could." I've never forgotten that. That was the only time Zephyr's ever got in trouble in school. He's in college now, so we'll see. Because I could. That's what I'm talking about this morning. Violence, bullying, domination happens oftentimes because others believe they can. They're stronger, they're tougher, more dominant, and I can get away with it with little consequences. This has been the story of our world. People with superior size and superior weapons or perceived better ideology decide to take another's space, agency, resources because they could. Thank God the side of reason, conscience, humanitarianism has continued to stand up to this mentality. But I want to talk about these two sides, doing what you want to do because I could, and this other side of conscience and humanitarianism, and how feeding the latter is how we have survived and thrived as a species. Humans have always been violent when necessary, but large-scale domination, all of the documentaries and books say, did not happen as much when we were hunter-gatherers. You know, the large-scale exploitation and genocide of other people, it wasn't the norm of the planet. There weren't a lot of people. But more and more as population grew, and of course you find out from Rutger Bregman in the book Humankind, A Hopeful History. Thank you, Janet. It's a lot of pages. I mean, I only got through a little bit. I got through enough to give me through the sermon. He said that owning the land was a misnomer. People didn't think that way. But then something happened. Agriculture. Agriculture. The agrarian age, farming, carving out square space and miles, began 10,000 years ago. And that is when humans became competitive. Agriculture allowed us to stay where we were and grow our food. Agriculture allowed humans to multiply in one location. We became owners of space and time. Our ancestors could cultivate the crops, grow their own sustenance. But sadly, when other tribes found that their crops were barren or were looking to expand their space because they thought they could, oftentimes these rival groups would come in and conquer other groups through raids and war. And over time, this sort of warring and combining populations, people staying in one place because of agriculture, humans begin to emerge into nation states, eventually empires. Along the way, we began the monetary system instead of bartering, which led to more governance to maintain order, to keep power. There's always those two wolves, to maintain order and peace, to keep power. And believe it or not, then religion emerges to provide meaning to the madness. That's the story of us, the story of taking and combining resources. And later we would modernize our food systems and technology, allowing us to advance into larger, more comfortable classes of people. And then literacy and human rights became big factors, especially to our survival. Humans were less expendable. They were needed for the work. And literacy changed a lot for us. It helped us in our evolution. So a lot of our story is not so good, but a lot of it is good. It's the two wolves, containing and controlling the wolves among us. We have not done a great job at it. The takers, the agriculturalists, have always dominated the leavers, the hunter-gatherers. Today they are industrialists and capitalists who control the masses. Some say they're only wolf and sheep. Wolves and sheep. But then some say there is the sheepdog, who must courageously step in to protect the sheep. I don't know. But I do know that we have to continue as a culture to manage the attitudes and beliefs of those who believe they can do whatever they want. And that is a kind of aggression. It's a kind of alpha male thing. You know, the alphas, we follow them just like in the animal kingdom. And there's nothing wrong with being a leader or a follower. The issue is that sometimes we can follow alphas who are toxic and dangerous. We've seen how this overconfident, narcissistic attitude can become infectious, taking hold of large groups that mean to do great harm. And what do we mean by harm? Harm is violence. What is violence? Violence is harm done to another person or people. The Buddhists might say that all things are living things, so do no harm to everything, all living things. But mostly today I'm talking about human beings, the harm we do. Violence happens when you believe you can do whatever you want without, and sometimes with, consequences. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. And it can happen when we are insensitive and egotistical. The question is, where does this attitude come from? I've alluded to it. It's a part of our primal nature. Many species have alphas who lead their packs, animals who are born to take the initiative or to fight for their group. Humans are no different, except that we can reason and rise above violence. And there is a difference. We slaughter our own kind. Other primates, they get in little tussles, but it's rare that other species will slaughter their own kind. So we are a peculiar creature. Violence, if it is unharnessed, represents to me all that is undeveloped in us. And I admit that we must sometimes go to war to protect innocence. But this is a representation of a larger fact that humanity is still very early in its evolutionary process. What is violence? Violence, for me, is most apparent when a person believes they have the right to control another's free will. It becomes pure evil when it kills or destroys because it sees a person or a people as something inferior. And of course, our minds go to Hitler, but it just doesn't apply to Hitler either. It applies to any group that has perpetrated any kind of ethnic cleansing, including American and European exceptionalism that has done great damage to brown people across the globe. But it also includes actions by Africans who kill Africans, and Arab nations at war, and the never-ending Israeli and Palestinian conflict. It includes individuals who have perpetrated senseless acts of violence. All of this has been mostly done at the hands of men. And I have to say that because it's true. The alpha male, the toxic alpha male, is a problem in our society. And violence happens when we allow toxic alpha leaders to lead without accountability. Mystically speaking, violence is the result of clashing perceptions of reality that cannot find resolution, so they become verbally or physically abusive. And that is fundamentalism. When one decides to force the issue. Next slide. Violence happens when people refuse to compromise or decide that their way of doing something is the only way to go. Violence happens because of fundamentalism. What is fundamentalism? Fundamentalism is defined as a strict adherence to some belief or ideology. There is no sway. And it is not only found in religions, it's found in any ideology that keeps us from hearing another's point of view. Fundamentalism is at the root of violence, and it is not based in love but force. And so violence for me is a personal psychosis that runs amok due to fundamentalist ideology. Now, you're free to see or hear or believe what you want, but the danger is when you decide to use your will to dominate another by any means necessary. The greatest sin to me is robbing people of their free will. And how about if you have legislative power or are a leader like many corrupt dictators? That's when your psychosis can become public and can do even greater damage. That group over there, man, they're taking our stuff. We got to do something, man. They're the problem. Othering at the bottom of why we go to war, why we end up in situations where there's genocide. People following someone's corrupted psychosis, someone's fundamentalism. I do my best, it's all in us, that wolf is in all of us, but I do my best to reject that impulse because I know it is that wolf run amok, and we have that wolf inside of us. As I said, I watch a lot of documentaries, and when you study the great leaders, I don't necessarily always see them as great. When I look at them, I see many deranged, paranoid, insecure men playing out a personal psychosis. And sometimes they say it's God-inspired. That God inspiration ends up subjugating millions. So the key to peace is figuring out ways to keep the toxic, energetic forces at bay. Unfortunately, like the last president, they seem to crave leadership and control. They always have. And yet humanity has advanced. Wow. Because I believe the vast majority of us, including the healthy alphas, are good, loving, and compassionate creatures. Now, I know at least one of you in here who's met someone that's evil, but I have not personally met someone that I would call evil. Now, I've read about a lot of evil people in history, but I have not personally met someone evil. I've met a lot of people I choose to keep my distance from. I've met people with sincere intentions who made poor decisions. I've met people caught up in strange karmic cycles of negativity that seem to follow them like the plague. But truly evil people, I have not personally met an evil person. That's been my experience. Now, certainly the media plays this up. It will make you think the world is awful, and as I say, the world is as awful as it is awesome. Keep perspective. And certainly humans have done many bad things, but my everyday experience is that humans choose the better angels of their nature. And that's what Rutger Bregman says in his book, Humankind. Cooperation is what has allowed us to thrive. Next slide. The 3 C's: civility, cooperation, compassion. I made that up, the 3 C's. I didn't want to give him credit for that one. These are where we have evolved in spite of sociopathic leaders. And I know I can see it flashing. Our egalitarian laws, which are always under attack by fundamentalist forces. The 3 C's are the push, and fundamentalism is the pull that attempts to drag us back to a lesser evolved species. So we have to keep finding even more creative ways to protect the rule of law and society from individual sociopaths and groupthink fundamentalism. These 2 things are what keep us from creating equitable systems for all. Nonviolence is our way forward. It is practically effective and spiritually sound. Now let us remember that the most successful movements in the world, the ones that have created dramatic social change, have been nonviolent movements. Nonviolence is not weakness, as Dr. King said, because it is based in love, it is based in reconciliation, it is based in the 3 C's. It's a path that reconciles enemies. And for me, it dissipates the negative karma in a tribe or relationships and is able to set a new pattern that can emerge and create something healthy and sustainable. So the goal for us today is to do more of the things that promote the 3 C's: civility, compassion, and you passed the test. Actually, I wrote compassion twice on here, so I had to try to remember. That's right, cooperation. Steven Pinker, the excellent author and researcher who wrote the book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, said that several factors have led us to living in the least violent time in human history today. Doesn't feel like that. And most of the things have led us to being a more civil society, keeping fundamentalism at bay. He says, and I'm reinterpreting his words, that the wider we draw the circle, including people of color, including women, including LGBTQ, the wider we draw the circle, the faster we speed up the process of our evolution toward freedom. The things that have freed us from tyranny and from sociopaths have been egalitarian systems that have made us smarter and more literate and more technological, and the big one, more interconnected, which has loosened boundaries and given us a whole lot more to lose if we go to war. This interconnection has exposed the world to the best versions of ourselves, the best practices in other cultures, and it's forced us to share resources more. So therefore, when we choose oneness, when we choose to be Buddhas, we move toward unity and nonviolence. Oneness is cooperation. Choosing oneness is civility. Oneness is love, and love is what frees us. And what I find interesting in all my reading is that science and spirituality, once again, are converging. The things the scientists are finding, the anthropologists, all the ists are finding, are saying exactly what religion, the best of religion, has been telling us for centuries. Steven Pinker said that religion and ethics and equal rights, understanding humanitarianism, promoting the rights for all, these are the mechanisms that civilize us and make us kinder and gentler. Now, we're always going to have a small percentage of us who are sociopathic and who tend to fundamentalism. But Pinker says, these factors that I have named have led us to living in a time in history that is the most safe and least violent ever. Civility, compassion, cooperation are the tools that lifted us out of the agrarian age of aggression toward this new age where we're moving towards sort of technological interconnection. There can be a time where violence is not something we experience on this planet. If you think of where we come from and where we are, I can imagine it. A time where people have a chance to live a good, every person, safe, educated, healthy life with no trauma, with no abuse, where there is no poverty, because poverty creates violence, because there's desperation. My message to you is to keep talking about, to keep leading, keep promoting all the things that evolve us. All the things that generate peace, all the things that ensure our economic systems, political systems, environmental, educational, financial systems are operating by these attributes. I never thought that I would learn a lesson about human nature from my own child. My son showed me in his innocence why we need the rule of law and why the rule of law must be continuously managed and evolved to protect human rights. This message reminds me of the wonderful words of the late Betsy Joanne Gibran, who was our retired minister of music emeritus. It's one of my favorite hymns. I say it in meetings as opening words to the chalice because those two verses really say it all. This is my prayer to you this morning. When all the people on this earth know deep inside their precious worth, when every single soul is free, we'll earn the name humanity. The choice, the two wolves, the choice to be the best we can begins the day we say, I am, claiming your worth and dignity. The unity, the oneness, for which we sigh. Buddha's suffering will never come through hate or lie. Listen to that a little bit. Amen. precious worth when every single soul is free. We'll earn the name humanity, the choice to be the best we can begins the day we say I am. The unity for which we sigh will never come